So your homework was to do this chapter 11 student work. As part of that, you're supposed to read the introduction. I am not a betting woman, but if I were a betting woman, I would bet. A number of you did not do that. So some of you did, I'm sure, but not all of you. So if you would please look at page 77. I'm going to read it aloud to you, and then we're going to go over the answers to the student work, which you were supposed to do for homework, which some of you did not do. Here's the thing, those of you that did not do it, you will never know when I'm going to collect them and grade them. And the more I see people writing and doing their homework, getting free answers for their homework, the more likely I will do that more often. Until you learn that when I tell you to do homework. Got it? Okay, great, excellent. So Christ confronts the woman at the well. I do not like this word confronts. It seems to be more like what I just did to you. I confronted you about that doing homework, right? And I don't see this conversation that way. So I don't know what word I prefer, but Christ speaks with the woman at the well, or converts the woman at the well. Yeah, something like that. Anyway, I didn't write the book. He speaks a different language than I do, so I don't like him. Her skin color is not the same as mine, so she can't be my friend. He talks with a funny accent, so he must be ignorant. That nurse is Arab, and Arabs are terrorists, so I don't want her treating me. That family's poor. We don't want to welcome them to our church. Why, before long, we'd be overrun with a bunch of welfare cases. The preceding statements are examples of what is called prejudice. Discrimination. Prejudice is an opinion or preconceived attitude that is developed and acted upon. Well, the action is not persecution. What's the word I just said? Discrimination. Thank you. It's discrimination. But anyway, I digress. Preconceived attitude that is developed and acted upon before one has or understands all the facts about a person, group, or issue, and sometimes in total disregard of the facts. Prejudice leads to hatred toward intolerance of, and even physical injury to the person or group against which the prejudice is directed. Remember Jesus' parable about the Good Samaritan? You might want to read that parable in Luke 10:30-37. That story illustrates prejudice. A traveler was attacked by thieves and left for dead by the side of the road. First a priest and then a Levite came along and saw the beaten man, but neither of them stopped to help him. Finally, a Samaritan came along, who not only saw the man, but also stopped and did everything he could to help him. He provided emergency first aid, we might say, and then he took him to an inn where he instructed the innkeeper to provide proper and complete medical care for him. He gave the innkeeper money for that purpose and then said, if it costs you any more than this, go ahead and do whatever it takes to make him well, and then bill me for it. The Samaritan went out of his way to do so much for the wounded man because he had himself, no doubt, experienced prejudicial treatment at the hands of others, possibly even priests and Levites. We can assume this because, by the way, it's a parable. But what it says there would have been true. We assume this because at the time of Christ, the Jews despised the Samaritans and treated them prejudicially. In both the parable of the Good Samaritan and the lesson that you are now beginning, however, Jesus taught us that prejudice has no place in the Christian life. All men and all people are sinners in need of God's saving grace, and our responsibility as believers is to share the good news of salvation with everyone, with all people. We are not to hold prejudices that prevent us from sharing the gospel with any group or individual. Once someone accepts Christ, we are to treat him or her as a brother or sister in Christ, because there is to be no distinction in the church based on race, ethnicity, nationality, national origin, or economic or professional condition. Does prejudice exist in the church today? Yes. Does it make it right? Definitely not. In this lesson, notice how Christ demonstrated a life without prejudice. How can you follow his example in dealing with your own prejudices? How can you help eliminate the prejudices of others? So now we're going to turn to the student work. And the first question says, why do you think John interjects a comment in verse 9 that the Jews do not associate with Samaritans? Yes?
Probably to stress like how enough was like how strongly they did.
So both of those things I think are true, right? I think to kind of emphasize how weird it was that he was talking to this woman. Yeah. Okay, so it has context. It lays down context and it deals with a theme. Yeah. Possibly.
Well, I mean, if he was, then John adding that might the reader at least this would have gotten their attention because.
Oh, absolutely! It would have gotten the Jews' attention. At the same time, remember, John's gospel was written for all people, right? And so some of the people who are reading this, including people that read it today, might not understand the enmity between the Jews and the Samaritans. And so I think everything you've said is correct. But I think then an extra thing is to make sure that his Greek readers, his Gentile readers, because he's writing in the late first century, know why that is so unusual, or are aware that this is shocking, actually. That a man would speak to a woman, and that a Jew would speak to a Samaritan, and here's this Jewish man speaking to this Samaritan woman. So it's extra. What did Jesus mean by living water? What is the difference between the water and the well and the living water? So first, what is living water? He's talking about eternal life. He's talking about salvation, essentially. So give me a difference between H2O and eternal life. Not that they're, many. Yeah. It's thirsty, like spiritually, right? Not physically. So it's the difference between a physical thirst and a spiritual thirst. And water only satisfies that thirst for a while. You're going to need more water later. I know that because kids can walk in every single class period and say, "Can I fill up my water bottle?" We have the best hydrated students on the planet. I'm convinced. We've got kids carrying around. My nephew carries around this jug like this, and he drinks it every day. Yeah, I don't even know how much it is. But anyway, yeah. So it's the difference between being permanently satisfied spiritually as opposed to just temporarily satisfied. Why did Jesus tell the woman to go get her husband when he knew she did not currently have a husband? Yes, John. Yeah, she had 5 already, and he knew that. So why? And she wasn't. The man that she was living with was not her husband. So she currently didn't have one. So why would he ask that if he knew it? Yeah.
Maybe like to test her, see if she would tell the truth and be open up the conversation.
Yes, that second part, absolutely. Yes.
Well, and later when she was telling others about it, he already knew what she had done, and so it was like speaking that I know you as like a person, and so he like was speaking the fact that he already knows her.
Yeah, those are both great.
Like him cutting to the chase. The fact that they're talking to each other in different places is controversial, but like them not just exchanging pleasantries and getting the real meaning of the matter is
Yeah.
That kind of shows
It's in line with what Jesus said to his parents when he was 12 when they found him in the temple, right? I have to be about my Father's business. Right? I have to be about my Father's business. By the way, if any of one of you go to BCC, I heard Gary Boyd years and years and years ago give a great sermon on that very thing. So yes, that's true. It's also true that he is revealing more of himself. He's letting her know, oh, Mary Jew. He's revealing something of himself. And, Morgan, he is also opening up a spiritual conversation. And he knew that this was kind of a leading question that would offer the opportunity for her to hear the truth. Not just the truth about what she's done, but the truth about what he can do for her. What did Jesus mean when he said that the time was coming when neither a mountain in Samaria nor Jerusalem would be the center of worship?
So that after the crucifixion,
Yeah, so it's this foreshadowing of a time when you wouldn't have to go to a specific place because Christ's Spirit dwells in us, right? God dwelt in the tabernacle, but because of Jesus, God can dwell in us. Yes.
Like how I demonstrate like when
Yeah, and that was the biggest issue for the early church, right? Because as I told you in the last lecture, that God so loves the world would have been like crazy to a Jew. No, he doesn't. He loves Israel. And on the heels of this, then Jesus is talking to the Samaritan, and so now we have Jews and Gentiles. Gentiles can know Jesus, but the early church had to struggle with this. The issue of circumcision was huge. But no longer do we have to earn our salvation. Christ has won it for us. All of those are really doing a great job today. So it is a foreshadowing of a time when the temple in Jerusalem would not be the place where people met with God. It was going to be destroyed. It was destroyed, and Jesus said that to his disciples. This thing's going to be destroyed. AKB. But in AD 70, that actually happened. And so then people would worship God with their whole hearts and everything. Imagine for a moment that you are the woman. That's easier for some of you than others. Wouldn't it be embarrassing for you to go into the city and tell the men that Jesus knew everything about you? What would cause you to tell everyone about him so? Yeah, more.
like the fact that Jesus had forgiven her, like the person, like her shame is gone. So like worrying about what people would think about that sin, that shame is no longer has to be careful, that God is like taken from that, is like reminder. She's like, I have to tell everybody, like, he is for me, he can do everything else. It wasn't a matter of unfair.
Absolutely. Yeah, all right.
She
Yeah, absolutely. There's this old time Christian song, like from the 70s or 80s, by a guy named Don Francisco. I don't like the song because it's so repetitive, both musically and lyrically, but it's about the guy that, that Jesus healed, and he just went and told everybody. And the name of the song is I Gotta Tell Somebody. I just gotta tell somebody about this guy. And that's exactly what happened. Allison, what were you going to say?
I was going to say like she realizes
Yeah, a guy comes and tells you everything about you. It's like, how do you know? It's like the first time I thought it was the first time I was meeting Mrs. Broyer. You know Mrs. Broyer upstairs, right? So the first time I thought I met her was in 1996-ish, and we were at a mutual friend's house watching a Husker football game, and she walked up to me and said, "So where are you in the line of sisters?" And I said, "I'm second. And how do you know me?" Have I told you this before? No. Okay. I've told some classes. Have I told you this? Yeah. Okay. So how do you know me? And we went to church together. She was just younger than me, and I didn't know her. Her mother was my history teacher. Other than that, yeah, that's how she knew me. Okay. I saw another name. I maybe saw Natalie's. Natalie, what are you going to say?
I was going to say also the fact that he also forgave her and she could go and tell her.
Yeah. And here's this Jewish man treating her with respect. The Samaritan people, men and women, didn't treat her with respect.
Said like her eyes were kind of like opened by that encounter, and she was given hope. I think she was kind of running toward like eternal life, that living water. But like also, yeah, she just wanted to share that with people because she didn't have it.
Absolutely, yeah. All of those are really astute comments, and I appreciate your participating so well, and so many of you participating. That's great. So if you would please now turn to the teacher lesson, and I am going to pause this for just a second. Okay, we're back. We're back. Let's talk about the woman at the well. Some of what I'm going to say you have already figured out, which is excellent.
That should be our.
I fully agree.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I want to wear a dress.
You have to have the jar.
Okay, so the last time we saw Jesus in chapter 3, who was he with? Nicodemus.
Oh yeah,
He was
the old
with
man.
Nicodemus, probably where?
At night.
At night, but where? That's when.
Oh.
Think about what happened before that in chapter 2.
Jerusalem.
He's probably in Jerusalem.
Yeah.
He's probably in Jerusalem. So now he's leaving Jerusalem to go to Galilee. So after this, Jesus and his disciples went into the Judean countryside, and he remained there with them and was baptizing. So this doesn't have a whole lot to do with anything, so I'm going to go through this really quickly. After this, we see this a number of times in John. It's an indeterminate period of time. Sometime after the Passover, sometime after the meeting with Nicodemus, Jesus went into the Judean countryside and he was baptizing people. Now, I'm going to read, let's see. So there's Jerusalem, and he's going to head north to Samaria. Now, there's going to be another map here, but you've got Judea down here, you've got Galilee up there, and in between was this area called Samaria. So what part of Israel does John primarily deal with? Yeah. No. The other ones do. Yeah. Jerusalem. Judea. But yes, Jerusalem specifically in Judea. So this is a story in Samaria, which is unusual in the Gospel of John. Most of the Gospel of John takes place in Jerusalem, in Judea. A little bit of it takes place in Galilee. This may be the only place, I'm not entirely sure, off the top of my head, that we see a story in John about Samaria. So this is the occasion. Now, when Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard that Jesus was making and baptizing more disciples than John, although Jesus himself did not baptize, but only his disciples, he left Judea and departed again for Galilee. So Jesus spent some time somewhere in Judea, and he was baptizing, or more specifically, his disciples were baptizing. We really don't know much more than that, and I think it's unwise to try and create a story around that. But he ends up leaving and going to Galilee. Yes?
You think Jesus had other people baptized because of the sheer mass of people, or because
Probably,
Is it
but
kind of
I don't think we can know for sure. I mean, that might have been at least a part of it. So again, he gets the interest of the Pharisees. What are you doing? And years ago, my mom had the naughtiest dog that ever lived. I mean, just such a naughty dog. So smart. So smart. His name was Snickle Fritz, because that was a name that my father called us when we were little. You little Snickle Fritz. We called him Fritzy. So smart. He could open purses. Like if you had anything, gum, mints, anything, he could unzip your purse. He was amazing. And at one point, my sister got so angry at him. She yelled, "I see what you're doing!" And he was, again, eating off the table. He'd gotten the chair, which we put the chairs away from the table. He had learned how to jump on the chair in such a way that it would roll right up to the table. And he started feasting on whatever was on the table. And then my mother would say, "Who left food on the table?" Oh, what a weird place to have food on the table. And so the Pharisees are saying, "We see what you're doing. You're baptizing," and so they're probably questioning him about that. So the Pharisees were already in opposition to Christ and what he was doing. But Jesus knew all things. We've already learned that. And so he knew that it wasn't the time for him to, rankle the Pharisees. And so he decides to leave. He is in complete control of what's happening. And he knows he's going to the cross. And he's in complete control of that. So he orchestrated the timing of his death. He knew when it would be. The hour has not yet come. And when the hour came, he said the hour has come. He knew all along. Jesus, I'm going to use a really good word for you. I think I'm going to make this the next word, however long it is. Jesus eschewed two things. E-S-C, it's like E-S-chew, I think. W, if my brain is remembering that correctly. He eschewed popularity, especially popularity gained too quickly. He did not want the crowds. What did he say whenever he healed someone? Don't tell anyone. He had big enough crowds as it was, right? And then secondly, he eschewed, he made sure that nobody killed him before it was time. And so God had a specific time for his birth and for his death. I love this verse from Galatians. It says, "But when the fullness of time had come," or in the NIV it says, "in the fullness of time, God sent forth his Son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those who were under the law, so that we might receive adoption as sons and daughters." I love that phrase, "in the fullness of time." That means at the exact right time, God sent his Son to be born, to live, and to die. And Jesus knew all of that. He had a specific purpose, and he was dedicated to it. And he was dedicated to do his Father's will. Again, what I quoted from when he was 12 years old, "I've got to be about my Father's business." He knew when he was 12 that he had a purpose, and he needed to stay the course of what God had called him to do. So we'll begin tomorrow talking about the place and the people of Samaria, and we'll get into the meat of this lecture. That's it for today.
who are the people groups that
We'll talk about that. But they were a mix of Jews and Gentiles, Assyrians, the Assyrians.
Starting with time, it is currently 0100 o'clock.